Hello, my wonderful queer viewers, or otherwise, and welcome back to yet another episode of Seasonal Gay Anime Spotlight, the show where I look at the queer characters of each season of anime and talk about them as they are up to this point in the winter season of 2022. Yada yada, you know how it goes, introductions, let's just jump right in. And let's begin with our first segment, Rewind the Gay. The part of the show where if an anime that features a queer character gets another season, I recap those previous seasons that feature the queer characters and speculate what might happen in this new season. So let's talk about Historia from Attack on Titan, the final season, part 2. One of the biggest anime of the decade is ending this season, and I've been loving it from the beginning. But one thing that I'm not a fan of is its treatment of Historia after the first half of the third season.
She went from being a badass woman whose strength and Ymir's love helped her become a queen that the people on the walls can rely on and look up to a political pawn used by different factions of our characters, and possibly being forced to be pregnant by Yelena and Eren. It's really unfortunate that the story continues to downgrade one of my favorite characters in the anime.
But hey, maybe this final part of the show will give Historia something to do other than being a baby maker. And now let's get to this season's queer anime, starting with Sasaki and Miyano from, well, Sasaki and Miyano. My god, I love me some soft gay boys. And they're also in opposites attract pairing, so that's just icing on the cake for me.
Due to some circumstances involving some bullies, Sasaki and Miyano end up meeting and getting closer as the months pass. This especially comes true when Sasaki learns Miyano's secret, and that is that he is a fan of BL manga and anime. Sasaki becomes interested in BL manga in order to learn more about Miyano, who he started to feel strange things towards, which confuses him at least, since Miyano does look a little feminine, but he's still a boy. But soon Sasaki realizes that, no, he likes Miyano as a boy. From this point on, Sasaki tries everything he can to always be with Miyano, coming to his class during lunch or staying at school later to walk home with him. He loves to hug Miyano and even tries to play the pocket game with him at one point. Yes, Sasaki is a little flirtatious and aggressive, always joking with Miyano that he wants to go out with him, but his heart flutters when he almost touches Miyano's hand, and gets a little jealous when Miyano gets chocolate from all of his classmates as a part of a Valentine's Day event, though he's happy when he learns that he's the only one that Miyano gave a gift to on White Day.
I can't tell you how many times in an episode I got a stupid grin on my face. I love this type of yaoi anime so much.
On Miyano's end, he begins to question whether Sasaki's flirtatious attitude is just him joking around or him being serious about it, since he thinks that Sasaki is just imitating scenes from the BL manga. But he clearly enjoys his time with Sasaki and wants to get closer to him too, and starts to question their friendship when he hears Sasaki tell Miyano that he likes him when he thought that he was asleep on the train.
There's nothing too complex about the queer elements of Sasaki and Miyano. It's just a simple, soft, gay love story between these two sweet boys. And really, in the year of our Lord 2022, I honestly don't need anything else. Now what's not as soft and simple is the queer elements to be found in Requiem for the Rose King. And before I start talking about it, I want to bring two things into context. Number one, Requiem for the Rose King is a very dramatic reimagining of Shakespeare's plays Richard III and Henry VI. And although I took 3 separate Shakespeare classes in college, I don't remember those 2 plays as much. I was never into Shakespeare's histories as opposed to his comedies and tragedies, so I'll probably miss some details in the anime that relates to the original plays. And second is the big elephant in the room, and that is that Richard is intersex. And I'm going to be upfront and say that I'm not really familiar with intersex people and the tribulations that they go through, with honestly the only positive representation that I've seen being Luca from Astra Lost in Space. So I'm sure I might accidentally say something wrong, and for that I apologize. And I might not be too knowledgeable on the subject to perfectly talk about it in this anime, but I will try my best. So, with that out of the way, let's begin.
As mentioned previously, the main character of Requiem for a Rose King is intersexed, which is different from the original play where Richard III was an ugly hunchback. While the Richard of the original play is a scheming and cunning villain, Richard from the anime is portrayed more as sympathetic. Because of the way that he was born, Richard is considered a demon child by many people, especially his own mother. But despite it all, Richard sees himself as male since that's how his father saw him and named him after. But despite his efforts to be a strong aid to his father, people see him as too weak due to his intersex body, and his mother hates him, believing him to be poisoning the mind of her husband. And with the ongoing war between the Yorks and the Lancasters for power over the throne, Richard tries his best to traverse a world that is against him, especially since his father is killed by Margaret.
I would say that the main problem with the portrayal of Richard as an intersex person is the many times his body is forced upon different people.
For example, when the Lancasters take over the House of York for the first time, the Prince Edward wants to learn of Richard's secret, threatening to rip his clothes off. When Richard fights back, Edward accidentally touches his chest, now believing Richard to be a woman and falling for him. Richard is also attacked by robbers, and when they discover his breasts, they threaten to rape him, but stop when they see his genitalia.
I'm really not a fan of these examples of threats discovering Richard's intersex body. The fact that Richard is intersex should not be used for dramatic tension in people learning his secret. I know that this is an old time period, and hell, it's not like people in modern times are respectful towards intersex people, but it still shouldn't be used as a tool for dramatic writing. I think that Richard's own gender dysphoria is enough for that. No need for external sources.
Now, because this is a dramatic period piece and an extreme reimagining of two of Shakespeare's histories, we've got some romance going around. I already mentioned Edward's lust for Richard, but based on visual storytelling, I don't know why, but I feel like the anime is going for a Romeo and Juliet type of romance between Richard and Henry VI, which won't be great since Richard is unaware that Henry is the king of the Lancasters, his enemy. But that's some great gothic romance shit, and I am all here for it. This is further enhanced in episode 4, where, while Edward is searching for his father, Henry runs into Richard again. After spending time together and sharing some drinks together, they end up sharing a bed together, having almost been intimate with each other. It's definitely clear that Richard is developing feelings for Henry, seeing him as the only person that might accept him in his intersex body.
Requiem for a Rose King is a complicated anime to talk about, especially with its fast-forwarding through the original manga material and its poor animation quality. Its portrayal as Richard as intersex is complicated as well, with the writing going more for a sensualization route for a more dramatic effect than being respective, I believe. But then again, I'm not as familiar with intersex tribulations, so I could be completely wrong. We'll just have to see how it goes in this core as well as the second one next season. Now let's move on to our next segment, Recap of Last Season. The part of the show where I look at the queer anime of last season and talk about whether the characters ended nicely or badly. But that does mean that there are spoilers ahead. You've been warned. First, let's talk about Yamai and Najimi from Komi-san Can't Communicate. Alright, before we start, let me make one thing clear. This anime is fucking hilarious. Probably the funniest of the year. From the animation, the character expressions, the dialogue, and the voice acting, everything is really funny. Each character has a specific character quirk that is sometimes brought to its extreme. Most of the times this results in great comedy. But when the character quirk relates to a problematic stereotype, that does mean that the problematic stereotype is brought to its extreme, making it even more obvious to the viewer. And this is definitely true for Yamai, who is a case of the predatory psycho-lesbian trope that I honestly haven't seen like this in anime for a while.
While most boys and girls at Komi's school blush when she passes by, it's mostly out of awe and admiration at her grace and beauty. Yamai, on the other hand, actually and genuinely loves her. To an obsessive degree, with her name being a reference to a yandere. How obsessive, might you ask? Well, in her introductory episode, she kidnaps Tadano out of jealousy and locks him up in her closet, with the possible threat of death. And after Tadano is rescued by Komi and Najimi, and Yamai apologizes, everyone is cool with it. Komi still wants to be friends with Yamai, and Tadano kind of accepts what happened to him. In the end, Yamai faces no consequences for, literally kidnapping someone. I'm sorry, but I don't think most people can just forget and forgive a crazy kidnapping with that. Yamai unfortunately ruins every scene that she's in, with her continually trying to get others out of the way of her getting to Komi. She'll try to get Komi into perverted situations, like when Komi wore the short-skirted maid outfit during the cultural festival. Yamai pretended to faint so she could see Komi's underwear. With all of that being said, however, sometimes, and I do mean sometimes, some comedic moments of Yamai did make me snicker a little. Mostly because of the anime's animation, character expressions, and voice acting.
What can I say? I'm a sucker for great comedic timing. But at the end of the day, it's just an outdated stereotype of queer women that, once again, I haven't really seen in anime to this degree in a while. But when most of the comedy comes from the extremes of the character quirks, and one of those characters' quirks is being a predatory psycho-lesbian, it can really bring down the anime at times. Now, Najimi, on the other hand, is a character that I love. Honestly, my favorite character of the anime. But there's two sides to Najimi. One side is great, and the other one is once again a little problematic.
Najimi has two quirks. One is that basically everyone their age is somehow their childhood friend, this including everyone in their class. Like during a summer festival, they somehow invited all of the town because they are all their childhood friends. Najimi's other quirk is that no one really knows what gender they are biologically, mostly because I believe Najimi to be genderqueer. While they mostly express themselves femininely, like with their school uniform and also wearing a maid outfit during the cultural festival, some of their mannerisms and expressions are also masculine. But some of the characters continue to question what biological sex Najimi is, as if their current gender identity expression doesn't matter. When the characters are at the pool, Najimi is going to change with Komi and the other girls, but Tadano makes them change in the mixed bathroom. Though thankfully, the anime cuts out an aside from the original manga where Tadano and the other boys try to see what biological sex Najimi is based on what swimsuit they wear. But unfortunately for them, Najimi wears a gender-neutral bathing suit.
Some moments of this character's quirk of Najimi reminds me of Tsugumi from Asobe Asobase, where the three girls try to discover if she had a penis or not. Thankfully though, Komi-san can't communicate is not as offensive as that, but still. It doesn't matter what biological sex Najimi is. However Najimi expresses themselves, that's the way that they are. And whether Najimi has a penis or a vagina is nobody's business. And sometimes the anime makes Najimi come across as trying to trick people, which falls into the trap cliche that you viewers know that I hate so much. With all that being said though, I fucking love Najimi.
They are so expressive and energetic. They are the life of the party and everyone loves to hang out with them. When Najimi is on screen, I'm always having a great time. I also love how much of a little shit they are. They love to cause trouble, put Komi and Tadano into awkward situations, and I love in the last episode of the season when they take over the school with their class's maid cafe during the cultural festival with their underhanded tactics, making one hell of a profit. Though it hilariously resulted in the class being disqualified from winning the festival's grand prize, which had me laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. I just love how this anime has such a fun and energetic genderqueer character, despite some of the problematic aspects to Najimi's character.
And that's how I feel about Komi-san Can't Communicate as a whole. Yes, they have some problematic queer elements to it, especially with Yamai, but the anime overall is just so funny and it's just a blast to watch that I can overall forgive it for some problematic queer elements, making me excited for the second season and this year's spring season of anime. And the second queer character, and the one that I want to focus the most on, is Yuka from Blue Period. In the last video, I said that I wasn't certain on Yuka's gender identity and sexuality. And as it turns out, that is also something that Yuka is dealing with themselves.
After the supposed quick recovery from being dumped by the guy for being biologically male, we never saw Yuka all that much in the next couple of episodes as they stopped going to the art club and prep school. And whenever we did get glimpses of Yuka, they never seemed to be doing well. As expected for some Japanese families, Yuka's parents disapprove of the lifestyle that Yuka is trying to live with their cross-dressing and trying to date boys. But the person in their family that seems to embrace Yuka for who they are is their grandmother, who is very sweet and kind. Though for all of this, Yuka just looked absolutely destroyed.
This all culminates into a moment that had me speechless for a little while afterwards.
During the first exam to get into TUA, while we don't exactly know what assignment Yuka was given, if it was the same as Yatora, it was to draw a self-portrait. And all that Yuka does is draw a big X on the canvas and walk out of the room. There is so much substance in that very short scene and speaks volumes to what Yuka's current inner crisis is. Yuka has no idea who they are. To themselves, they are a complicated void of different pieces that they can't put together. Are they male or are they female? Are they a mixture of both or neither? Yuka has no one to turn to, so how are they supposed to figure it out? So what else is there to do than to make a big X of nothingness be your own self-portrait? After Yotora's prep school teacher asks him to check up on Yuka and he gives them a call, we learn that they are working part-time at a hostess bars as a woman. Unfortunately for some queer youth in Japan, this type of job is the only place that will truly accept you. Yuka rightfully calls Yotora out on his bullshit in offering to help without truly putting in the work.
君は溺れる人がいたら救命道具を持ってきても海に飛び込むことはしない。裸で泣いてる人がいたら服をかけて話を聞くことはあっても自分も脱ぐことは絶対にない。
I also like how in this scene Yuka is joking around, but it's pretty clear that they are crying out for help. The voice acting of Yuka's Japanese seiyuu also helps with this. And the final nail in the coffin for Yuka is when their father threw out all of their belongings, though thankfully their grandmother managed to save some of the art supplies. Yotora reaches out again, ready to better help their friend this time, and the two take a sudden night trip to the sea. The next morning, in a very vulnerable moment, Yuka tells Yotora that in middle school, they told a friend that they wanted to die. And that friend said, well, you better die naked. If that embarrasses you and you're bothered by people's opinions, then you can't die just yet.
Part of this has to do with Yuka's inner crisis. They are battling two sides of the same gender dysphoria coin. They go against how society says that they should present themselves, but at the same time, they themselves don't entirely know how to present themselves.
Spurred by this memory, Yuka suggests that both they and Yotora do self-portraits while naked. And in my favorite scene in the anime, they do just that, getting naked and drawing themselves.
And just an aside here, I love how much of a fan disservice this scene is.
While Yuka and Yotora are good-looking kids, the camera and cinematography doesn't show off the attractiveness of the nakedness, but how vulnerable it can be. to truly look at yourself, your true self, and draw it. You look at it long enough and a naked body just becomes a naked body, nothing more, nothing less. Not to mention that I don't think I've seen something like this when it comes to a queer body in terms of gender identity. This smartly carries over to the second part of the exam, which is drawing a nude model of a woman in her early 20s. Yutora finds out that he isn't embarrassed to be looking at a naked woman, because like he did with his own naked body, if you stare at it long enough, the attractiveness sort of goes away. Once again, the camera and cinematography doing the same, heightened a little more in the original manga, which included the woman's nipples and pubic hair. Getting back on track, as they draw themselves, Yuka tells Yutora that the reason that they were pursuing Japanese arts was because their grandma liked it. And with Yuka not feeling this career path anymore, they are worried about upsetting her, the only member of their family who truly accepts them. As they talk more, Yuka reveals that the previously mentioned girl from middle school was someone that Yuka loved. This comes as a surprise to Yutora, who thought that Yuka just liked boys, but it turns out they're bisexual. Though Yuka admits that because of their looks, it would be simpler if they were just attracted to men. Yutora notes that Yuka has been referring to themselves with she/her pronouns recently, perhaps to make their life simpler. But as Yutora points out, isn't that just giving Yuka another label? Another label because of how society views them, instead of how Yuka views himself? While Yutora at first thought that Yuka was just a weird cross-dresser, he now realizes that Yuka is just like he is, a complex human being. Thanks to this trip, Yuka seems to be ready to face the future, whatever it might bring them. And at the end of the anime, while we don't get any conclusive details on Yuka's journey with their future and gender identity, they seem to be in a happier place, having rejoined the art club and graduating high school successfully.
I will say that while Yuka is my dear child and I love their journey through the anime, plus I've rewatched that naked scene multiple times, I do have two problems with how Yuka is portrayed in Blue Period. One quick one is that in the end, Yutora still refers to Yuka as Ryuji, which once again, back in episode 1, Yuka expressed dislike at the name. While it's great that Yutora has accepted Yuka now and has become closer to them, I really wish he'd stop dead naming them. And the second problem also has to do with Yutora, in that basically some parts of Yuka's crisis sometimes feels like it's there so that ultimately Yutora can learn a lesson and become a better person and improve their art a little more. A queer character should not be going through a difficult time for the sole purpose of the cis-straight protagonist character development. It doesn't 100% come across as this, but it's still there when you really look at it. Once again, it's not something that completely ruins Yuka's character, but it's a critique nonetheless. Because once again, Blue Period was a surprise anime of the season, and Yuka was a complex and interesting queer character to follow. So, that's the end of the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, like and comment on anything you want to say. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more. Catch you later.